welcome everyone to the first in the 2021 series of the Roadmap to Recovery series, where we all get together because I think we can pretty much guarantee that we can't rely on the government to go bail us out. So we all have to come together, collaborate, and actually work it out ourselves. And the best way to do that is to bring in some real experts. For those of you who have never met me before, my name is Marg Lange from Marg Lange Change Agency. I relaunch and recover COVID-affected businesses through my From Survival to Relaunch program. And I do that by basically connecting your business with the market to find out exactly what they're thinking and feeling and where they're going, get that feedback, and then we relaunch a strategy that is in line with how they're tracking. So first of all, what I'd like to do is introduce the panel today. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Darren True from Business Now, who's my CAT team accountant. Welcome, Darren.
Hi.
And secondly, I'd like to introduce John Ross from Piranha Collections. He's our local debt collector on the CAT team. Welcome, John.
Good morning, all.
And finally, but not last, but finally, is Martin Caddick from Finance for Business, and he's our working capital specialist. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all.
Okay, so given the fact that this webinar is called How to Build an Adaptable Business in an Open and Shut Economy, I'm just going to throw it open as an opening question to the panel. Is it actually possible to build a business that is adaptable when we've got open, shut, open, shut, open, shut? So Darren, would you like to start off and tell me whether you think it is possible?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think it's all about being flexible and it's all about being creative. And often what we're finding is the old ways just aren't working anymore or may not work as well as they did before. So you need to learn from the lessons of lockdowns 1, 2, 3 and 4 in Victoria and just be, adapt to the situation. So if you don't adapt, you're probably not going to survive. And probably just to give an example there, like a restaurant in the past, they might have had the customers come to them and produce the meals and that sort of thing. So now it's, well, we can't do that. So we've got to deliver the meals to the customer. So it's all about being adaptive. That's all.
John?
Oh, I agree. It's if you're not moving with the times at the moment and looking at what mistakes were made in the past, you're not going to go forward. And it's people talking to their accountants and their finance people to find out. There's so many lending options out there to support businesses at the moment. It's just being aware of what's there and who can help, relying on the experts.
Yeah, sure. And Martin, what would you say about building an adaptable business when we're, up and down, up and down, up and down?
Well, look, I think, thanks, Mark. Look, I think business is terribly adaptable. And that's been shown when we look at the insolvencies lists today. Not many businesses are going broke, as everybody was predicting, including me. So the situation is that we've seen that business can be terribly adaptable because look at the way our economy is growing. We've had all of these lockdowns, but fortunately the stimulus that the government has provided has been so much. The cost of money is relatively cheap. We're seeing booming house prices. We actually have a very low unemployment level to pre-pandemic levels. The situation is that the business is continuing to soldier on. There has been a lot of change going on and a lot of adaptation, but particularly small business are very adaptable machines. So, I'm quite optimistic for the outcomes of the economy.
Thanks, Martin. So, Darren, my second question to you is, as an accountant, you always are talking about you should be organising and forecasting your cash flow. But how do you do that when you've got a situation where you've done your forecast and then Dan goes and shuts the border? Like, how does that work? Is there another tool that is out there to help you, or how on earth can you do cash forecasting when we have no idea when the next snap lockdown is going to happen?
Yeah, there's probably two types of businesses in this scenario, where one where they just really can't operate, they are shut down, they can't produce any income whatsoever, and you've got others that can operate and still generate at a lower level. So to give an example of that, probably weddings, you might have a function centre that might cater for up to 400 people. and at the moment they can only do weddings for 10. So I feel very, sad for those sort of operators because they just can't generate the money that they want to. So we'll put those people aside and we'll talk about the others. So in the past, we've probably done a cash flow budget or a yearly budget based on your annual figures, divided by 12, and then slot into the various months and work out how you're going. Now that's all much the old way because we've got to be so much more fluid, flexible in terms of current operating situations. So I'm even for clients now doing even 2-week and 4-week and maybe 3-month budgets to cater for the current situation, so that they've got a bit of certainty about how they're going to get through and how they're going to pay the bills that have to be paid in the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, whatever. So I'm finding that is a particularly good way of keeping the clients with their business, being able to continue to operate. And also, I also reinforce to them that the principles of business just don't change. It's just about, maintaining, customer service, communicating with your clients, keep the marketing going, what's your margins, what's your costs, all those sorts of things. They've all got to continue to operate, as they were. So there's no silver bullet. You still got to do those, basic principles, but it's all scaled down to a lower level if you can't operate at full speed. So, and then when you come out of lockdown, everything's ramped up again. So you've got to change gear, reproduce an amended set of figures. And I just try to sort of keep people saying, well, there's no point putting hands up and saying, I just can't do this. You just got to keep a cool head, think about how you're going to operate in disrupted situation, and you'll get through.
Yeah, and what I'm loving about that, Darren, is the takeaway I've got from that is basically keeping contact with your accountant. So don't do it like, oh, everything's going to be shut down. Like they do say, like there's rumors. Like I know, John, you're really good because you go, oh, there's a rumor he's going to shut the place down, and he did, right? So if you are surrounded by the right people, then you contact your accountant and go, hey, this is going to, it sounds like it's going to happen, and you surround yourself with the right people. Then you can actually do that adapting part and go, okay, let's relook at the forecast. And I know that we've got some business coaches on here today. The same thing, you should be getting in contact with your customers and your clients and saying, hey, maybe we should be reviewing what our strategy was because it looks like there's another lockdown coming.
Well, a good day for all Victorians is what I heard. However, I think it's a good day for some Victorians, and I think it's a really tough day for a lot of other Victorians. And the other Victorians are those people like myself in the events, hospitality, fitness, arts and entertainment sectors, and many others, and many sole traders within those. It's not a great day for us. So whilst lockdown may be over, lock up is on. If we follow what's happened in regional Victoria, I think we'll see that we've probably got another 4 weeks of restraint of trade. So that will, for the industry, mean probably about 6 weeks of handcuffs on, the inability to actually earn revenue, offset by no support of any foundry from either federal or state government. So it might sound like big lumps of money, but today, $2,000, it doesn't even help anyone put the lights on. So it is, once again, a slap in the face to these industries that have actually done 15 months of fighting this war of COVID. The war of COVID is, of course, a health one. None of us disrespect that. But with 3 people currently in hospital, you do question, what is the big picture? And I can only look at things big picture. That's why we call big group, big group. So for me, the big picture output is the financial ramifications on one side, the emotional ramifications on the other, and then what's the solution? So with the financial bit, I tend to go lighter on that, I suppose, in some way. That said, it's costing big groups somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 a week. That's just looking after our full-timers. That's just looking after our obligations on buildings and rentals, and that's just keeping the lights on in a big, small business in hospitality. So multiply that by 2 weeks we've had, multiply that by a potential 6 weeks, multiply that by lockdown 4. It doesn't feel great. That's called cash reserves. That's called just, supporting your business obligations as a business owner should. But this is a very hard one to swallow. So we put the financial bit there because there's, the only output on that is working hard and rebuilding. And we will do that with a bloody good team, and I'm very, very proud of them. The emotional piece, though, it doesn't end as quickly as the financial ramifications. These are going to go on for a very, very long time. And I suppose it's the only positive negative I can see at the moment. I had to today come outside to remind myself that I'm bloody lucky to be in nature, and that I've got a warm coat to keep me warm on these bloody cold Melbourne days. But not everybody has that. Not everybody has the family support. Not everybody has the financial support. So that's what's concerning me a lot after today. The hospitality industry has been struck so many blows. There's been no respect or understanding all the way through. Professor Sutton today touched on, a wedding can just be moved. Well, I've spoken to hundreds of girls in tears. I've spoken to hundreds of sole traders who can't pay their rent because, once again, their photographers, their artists, their florists, they've got no work and they've got no support, and nothing has happened for them all the way through. So yes, the wedding can be moved, but there's an output of that. Business confidence doesn't just come back, Professor Sutton. It takes a long time to get these things happening. And yes, a funeral does need to be orchestrated quickly, but let me tell you, I know very well the emotional implications of how it feels when you've got 5 people standing by a graveside. So those things are massive. The impact on our children is massive, and they're not going to stop.
John, that's heartbreaking. That is so heartbreaking to watch. And as a debt collector, I mean, he was talking about the fact that his savings are going down. He's doing the right thing by his staff. Given the fact that in the past, Martin or yourself would have said, go negotiate with your suppliers your terms and conditions, right, for things that you need to pay for. But, everyone's in the same boat, John. So how do you debt-proof your business to make it adaptable? How does that work?
Sorry, that's a great wish. I don't think you'll ever debt-proof your business because there's too many outside entities that affect what you're doing. The biggest thing at the moment for anyone, and as you say, you might be in trouble, your supplier's in trouble, your clients are in trouble. You first need, seriously, I think, to go and see people like Drew. Go and see your accountant and see what they're aware and how they can possibly restructure your business. There's refinancing options, restructuring options, and believe me, talking to other people never hurts. If you know what's happening with them and you can work around it, that's where it's going. Unfortunately, at the moment, and I know from a few of my clients in the CBD, tenants are just not flexible at all at the moment now because they're so far behind. They're just not prepared to do anything. So I've got a gentleman that's got 3 hair supply joints in the city. He cannot open up. One's in Elizabeth Street, one's up in Latrobe Street. He's got no byproducts. He's walked away. He's walked away from his 3 businesses because the guys aren't flexible at all, and he's just said, fine, take me. I've got nothing to give you. You're going to lose out. You either help me or you don't. But it is, and I agree with the gentleman there. It's a very emotional time at the moment for everyone, and that's all I can do. That's what I'm doing with most of my clients is just keep the conversation up. Talking to the debtors, talking to the clients, seeing what's happening, and if there's some options available, pointing them in the right direction.
Yeah, of course, John, I'm all for that collaboration, and I think that's a big takeaway here is collaborating and staying connected, because that's what I'm all about. My business is ensuring that you surround yourself with the right people, get the right information. That's why we're having webinars like this. So, Martin, what I love about you is you're a sailor by heart. You always say, look, Mark, business owners have just got to stay the course. And I'm like, yeah, well, the last time I remember we were having this conversation and you said, Mark, it's not negative. It's not negative. It's all good. He's only going to lock us down for 7 days. And it was 14, Martin. And it was funny because I was like thinking, I wanted to go call Martin and say, yeah, you said it was 7 and everything was going to be fine. Now it's 14. And that's the problem, is that we don't have that certainty. So I'm wondering number one, how do you keep the course in this scenario? And I remember last year when we were doing the Crush September webinar series and you were saying, there's a liquid liquidity crisis coming, and it's not going to come in September, it's going to come in March. Well, here we are, it's June. Aren't we already in the liquidity crisis now, Martin?
Well, I predicted we would be. The situation is that when you make predictions, make lots of them, and you tend to get a few right. I must admit my crystal ball is somewhat cloudy at the moment. I still think there will be a liquidity problem coming up, but what has been amazing is we've seen how resilient business has been. Businesses managed to survive, and most have. Look, if we look at the insolvency lists, still the number of businesses you would normally expect to be becoming insolvent and have administrators and liquidators appointed isn't happening.
Mm.
And the situation is businesses are adaptable, but there are a couple of other factors. Firstly, we got so much stimulus into the economy that your average customer, your punter in the street, has got a pocket full of money. He's not going overseas this year. He didn't go overseas last year. His house prices increased. His mortgage has dropped because interest rates are low. And every time we come out of lockdown, we see a great surge. And these surges are what are giving business hope. Because what's happening is there's a lot of pent-up demand. And look, it's still not making up the difference, but all of a sudden businesses are able to survive because right now, try and get a booking to go out for dinner tonight. Every restaurant and hospitality venue in Melbourne is booked out. One, because there's a restriction of only 50 people.
I was about to say.
Yeah, but that's part of the reason. But tomorrow night, they're all booked out, and they're all booked out Sunday night. So while they're not at capacity, and that may not be viable, might only break even for some of them, they're back and trading, and there's demand there.
And they're also full on the night before lockdown too.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody goes out the night before lockdown. I did myself.
Yeah.
So, you've got to understand that there is a lot of demand there. So that's where the light is at the end of the tunnel. But I still think that as we get further down the track, and my crystal ball is telling me that it's maybe 12 months from now, there are going to be problems. Simply, if you look at the unemployment stats, they are currently better than what they were pre-COVID. But there's an anomaly in those because they're not showing the overseas workers that were part of those numbers beforehand. The unemployment, in other words, a lot of the people are now employed doing fruit picking that used to be happening from migrants that we would import or people from the islands come and pick the fruit. So there is a demand for jobs, but the total amount of jobs in the community aren't the same. And there are people that have lost their jobs, and there are businesses that have shrunk, and they will cause some problems in the economy down the track. So I still think there will be a liquidity crisis, and business needs, if they want to make an adaptable business, they need to look very much at planning their cash flow and having cash reserves. And cash reserves aren't necessarily money under the mattress. They have the ability to borrow if needed. So they should be looking at what options are available for borrowing now, because when it gets tight, it'll be harder to get the money. These are the things that businesses can do depending what industry you're in, particularly if you're in a function, wedding reception type business, you're going to have issues, but all those brides are still going to get married, and while, you might have run your function venue 3 nights a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, now you'll be doing weddings Monday, Tuesday, just to pick up the demand. So it's not necessarily as hopeless as we think. The bank economists are saying that the economy is going to do really well. If we get overseas students back in, things will be good. But if we don't, that's 1% of GDP down the toilet. And there are some other factors that are still floating out there that we don't know about. But internally, demand is still high. There's a lot of liquidity in the economy. A lot of customers want to buy things. Great time to sell furniture. Harvey Norman's booming. Everyone wants a new couch, new TVs. All of those particular retail sales are still doing well.
So, what I love about that, Martin, is that basically what we're forgetting is the customer is cashed up.
Mm.
And the fact is that, so if we're just now trying to tie this all together. So Darren's saying keep in contact with your accountant and just, maybe do your cash flow forecasts every 2 weeks, not 6, 12 months like in the traditional sense. Keep in contact with your customers, because if you're front of mind, then they're going to spend with you. And then I guess the other thing too is that, you know, just making sure that you, like if you're a business coach or business development manager or someone on here today, making sure you're in constant contact with your business clients. So really connection and contact is coming up a lot in this conversation, I think. And the fact is that, you know how we have this mindset of it's all stuffed and it's all doom and gloom. But what Darren has actually just said is it's sort of like we go from this, oh my God, lockdown, we don't know how long, followed by a splurge. Lockdown, oh, we don't know how long, followed by a splurge. And once we get the pattern and understanding of that, I think we can then start to be a little bit more adaptable. Jamie made a good point though, Martin. You just said in the comments there, but some of the hospitality people are you know, having trouble finding staff. So I'm not really sure how that would work, being adaptable if you can't find staff. Martin, Darren, John, thoughts? Go on, John.
Maybe you'll get more staff if you pay them more, or make the T's and C's they work under a better. But we've got to remember, particularly in hospitality, the 25% of all the waitresses you meet who serve your table are foreign students.
Yes.
There are no foreign students anymore. So you've got a 25% shortage where you face there. So, you know, some of those industries have short staff problems, but we do see that there are these surges. Things are picking up and then coming back. We can't predict what those peaks and troughs are going to be because we don't know when the next lockdown's coming. But we know that when we do go into lockdown, we'll have plenty to get at the other end because there will be that surge. So it's about making your business flexible and adaptable to the circumstances, because COVID's a 2-year issue. It's going to be here for the next 2 years. You know, the vaccination numbers aren't going to be high enough. There will be other lockdowns, and who knows what the next bug will be. So, you know, you have to think long term that you've got to make some changes and be adaptable in your business. You know, there are great provisions now. Full-time and part-time staff can be stood down immediately at a lockdown. And if you're in hospitality, that's a third of your expenses already managed. And look, just talking about, John mentioned, one of the things that people don't quite understand is what I call the landlord's dilemma in the city. Because if you're a landlord and you have a city building, and let's say that building is worth $10 million, it's based on $10 million because of your rent roll. If you go to your client and halve your rent because your client, there's fewer people in the city, it's no longer as valuable, retail proposition is as good. If you halve the rent on that building, your building that was worth 10 million is now worth 5 million, and you owe the bank 6 million. So you've got a liquidity crisis because you've got to produce another 2.5 million to keep the bank within the covenants you've signed. So city landlords would rather see someone walk away than halve the rent, because if they walk away, they can still maintain their building's worth $10 million. So these are the sorts of things, because remember, the landlords forgave some rent and were able to do that under legislation, but the banks didn't. The banks continue to bill the landlord and accumulate the interest, and they suffered no pain. So the landlord in many circumstances is a victim in this situation.
In terms of, let's try now to get some takeaways here, because this is going to be the last question I'm going to ask before I open up to the panel to take questions from those of you attending today. So let's starting with you, John. What would be the top 3 things as a debt collector that you would tell business owners they should be doing right now?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Believe it or not, the first thing I'd be telling them is to go and see people like Darren. Go and see your accountant or your business advisor or your business coach, and get that advice as to where you, because no one knows better your business than they do. They're seeing it all the time. The other thing is get your back office in order. And I stress it all the time. And what I mean by that is have your invoicing correct, having your terms and conditions correct to protect yourself. And the last one is know who you're dealing with, know your clients. You know, if you're going to pick up a new client and they're a business, is the ABN current? You know, are they being struck off at the moment? So know who you're dealing with.
Sure. And so, Darren, what would you suggest would be the top 3 things as an accountant?
I came across a survey recently conducted by Banjo, who are a fintech company, and there's 2 parts to this. One was saying, what are the top 5 actions that were taken in response to the pandemic? So number one was decrease headcount. So people were cutting back on wages, staff numbers and also hours. Number two was to move part or all of your business online. Number three was to launch new products. Number four was to invest in technology. And number five was to increase your investment in marketing. So they're the responses that businesses took as a result of going into the pandemic.
I love that, Darren, because that's what I do for clients.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, everyone.
Yeah.
And what else would you say?
So the next little study was done saying what are the top five drivers of growth in 2021 and 22 coming out of the pandemic. So number one was to significantly improve your existing products. Number two was to purchase new equipment and assets. Number three was to invest in more marketing. Number four was to invest in technology. And number five was to invest in new products and get them to market as soon as you can. So again, that reinforces everything you're providing to your client base, Snug. And it comes out in this study, which was independent, and I think it's actually quite a useful study.
Yeah. And finally, Martin, what would you say is your top three?
Look, I think my top three is to one, have a good mental attitude. That's the first thing that someone in business has to do. To realise, that if they stay the course, the rewards will be there. The second one is to think about the opportunity it offers, because in many circumstances, some of your competitors are not going to be there in 12 months' time. So if you have the right attitude and have run a tight ship and manage your costs well, you will have the opportunity to pick up your competitor's business. So, I think there's a bit of optimism to see what will happen in the future and to see what might be available, because many businesses will possibly not survive, or they will just get tired and not want to struggle on anymore. And that may lead to opportunities to grow your own business. And the third thing that I would do is you can't do much unless you've got a bit of cash. So you need to look at squirreling some money away, watching your costs, and see what your options are to get some additional working capital so you can take advantage of the opportunities that may be there in the future.
It's interesting, Martin, because I was reading an article the other day that basically said that the reason why Australia is recovering so well is that half of Australia lost their jobs, or their businesses were affected. So now what's happening in Australia is that most Australians have two jobs. And then I also read, beware of your side hustle, because if you think you can be on eBay and sell stuff for cash on your side hustle, the ATO is going to be onto you, and they'll probably be onto Facebook Marketplace. So, because I was actually thinking it might be a good idea to basically do pay staff cash. Maybe that's the answer, Jamie, to your job security. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just open up this discussion now. All right. So I'm just going to go to gallery view here. So anyone who's here today, who's been listening, you just want to raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask the panel a question if you've got one. Jamie.
Interesting to listen to Darren in terms of what businesses are doing as per that report that came out. And the one that was glaringly missing is one that I constantly work with my clients on, and that's around the cost and the numbers in your business. If you don't know your costs, don't know your numbers, don't know your margins, it's a real issue. And I think when pre-pandemic, when businesses were doing well, and I think a lot of business owners, they don't look at their numbers, they just look at their bank account, everything's fine. What these challenges present is something that owners should be doing all the time, is looking at their numbers. So it's interesting that in all of those, in that particular report, that knowing your numbers wasn't probably the biggest one. Darren, I'd like your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's very, very valid of what you say there, and I always encourage my clients to know what it costs to open the door each day and turn a dollar, because until you know that number, you're flying blind, and then all of that sort of costing and break-even analysis gets thrown on its head a bit as you go into lockdown and then come out of lockdown, because all those costs sort of change and your incomes change. So it's very, very valid. And I'll just read off the report, Jamie, what the top 5 were. So maybe people got it wrong.
It just, as I said, from my point, knowing your numbers, and I think, as I said, you should always know them, and a lot of people are looking at them now. And the other one for me was just around products. So you mentioned a couple of times there, those reports mention, improving products or bringing new products to market. But I also think reviewing your products, if you've got a large product line, the products in there that don't have the right margins or aren't selling the right places. So it's also about divesting yourself from products that aren't performing.
And that's why you got to know who your market is and talk to them about what are they needing, because they might not need your product anymore. And that's where I come in, because I actually go and do the market research. So has anyone else got any other questions? Darren, you wanted to speak? Yeah.
So just following on that, Jamie, I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that the simplest way to make more money is to sell more of those products that've got the greater margin. That's pretty basic. Why try to sell everything? Why not focus on the ones that actually generate the greater margin and get more of those out the door? That's what it's all about. So,
any other questions? Martin, would you like to ask anyone? I know Stu invited Peter. Is anyone else here your guest here today?
Yes, Toby and Raj, guests of mine.
Yeah.
Look, I suppose my question to any small businesses out there is, what are you seeing as your greatest single challenge at the moment?
Karen? Because I know that you're a consultant, I'm really curious as to why you wanted to come on today. You might like to share who you work with and what you've learned here today and how you're going to apply it. And
I've been running my consultancy business for 17 years. I'm a sole trader, and I work in the Aboriginal space, so I'm Aboriginal. All my clients are, corporate, government, community. And I guess for me, when it all happened, I had a whole heap of workshops booked across Australia, because I travel everywhere. And then I couldn't do it. So I had a meltdown for about a week thinking, where's my cash flow coming from? I've got reserves, I'm 3/4 of the way paying off my mortgage. So went through all of that. Hubby and I looked at everything. My hubby's, retired early. So I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? So, and people were just cancelling left, right and centre in a couple of days of the lockdown 1. And then I got over myself, slapped myself up and said, I can just put everything online and that's be so much easier. And I'll just save so much money in travel. And I added it up for this financial year. I've saved 50,000 in travel.
Wow. What are you going to spend that money on?
I don't know yet. I'll probably the mortgage. I don't know yet. Still figuring that one out. But it's kind of like you get nervous. And so you just want to keep it there for just in case for whatever, might happen. And that was just, paying for parking in the city, because I'd have to drive from different places to different places. So, and I live in Doncaster East. So, we've always been calling for Doncaster Rail, and that's never happened and probably never will happen. But I also sit on Aboriginal Chamber of Commerce. So we have 350 businesses who are operating across different sectors. And we worked out that government put the stimulus package out, and 3/4 of our businesses weren't eligible because they were sole traders and earning under the threshold. And so we went back and actually lobbied really hard, went right to the top, and just said, this is going to look really bad for you if you don't support. And so they did. And now they're all flourishing. So out of 350 businesses, only 2 have closed down. So we thought,
that's so good to hear.
Yeah, so that's about pivoting. What Darren's saying about, with your product, sell what you can, then rebadge, and then it looks like you've got a new product and everyone gets excited about a new product, even though it might be an old one, just, kind of rebadged a bit. So a lot of that was actually happening. And we've got 68 Aboriginal construction businesses. And, of course, a lot of work's had to stop. So it's the physical work that, if you can't do the physical work, then that's a challenge. And if there's no stimulus to keep you going, then, that's a problem too. So I've actually been more busy than I have been in I don't know how long. And I can't keep up with the workload. So I'm farming it out to people now. Just because people want a lot of training, because if you can do it online, then you're guaranteeing more people being on board than if you go into their workplace and they get distracted by what's going on. But when you're on Zoom, you've got them, locked in basically.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to meet those ticker boxes as well. You know, all our training, all our staff must have training for this and that by this period of time. And government's also put in place new legislation for Aboriginal traditional owner groups as well, where you have to actually negotiate and consult, and so there's been money generated around that too. So yeah, so the part for me is I'm a people person, and I find it really hard just sitting here looking at the screen and looking at myself the whole time. That's the thing for me.
So I was going to say, Karen, so going forward, do you think you'll try and get back to that face-to-face, or will you maintain a lot of the Zoom training?
I think the training will be maintained on Zoom, but then I've got a lot of workshop stuff that people, and you know, my community want to do face-to-face. They're touchy-feely, huggy, you know, people. They need to be in the space, particularly elders in my community. So they're like, no, Karen, we'll wait until you can come out and see us. So I'm like, okay. So I think there'll be a mix, but it's also the last lockdown before this one, and we had, you know, those couple of months to get out and about, and we were just sort of getting the momentum. I was struggling to race back to do Zoom, and then I found I was in the car park, wherever I was, you know, with the phone, trying to run something, and that was a challenge. So I've got to really space out the getting to and from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe
I
was just thinking about Darren and Martin. What should she do with the $50,000 worth of cash? Any suggestions? Invest.
Well,
I think that's
Well,
the
I think it's a great example of what small business are doing.
yeah.
You know, you change the way you did business, and it's going to be economically more viable for you. And when you eventually do get back on the road, you'll be able to do more of the touchy-feely.
Yeah.
So you're developing a hybrid business, you know, part Zoom, part face-to-face, which means you can do more with less. So, yeah, and that's why I'm saying business is so adaptable.
Sure. Vivian, Toby, Raj, Peter, any questions? Anything you'd like to share?
I'll agree with Jamie, what Jamie was talking about, people not looking at their numbers. And that's a very important fact, because most of the time the numbers that are being written are based on just the bank statement. They're just bank feed numbers, and it's all just history with nothing in the future. They don't even bother recording supplier bills and customer invoices. So going basically into accrual accounting will actually give some numbers. If you're just doing a reconciliation of your bank and making that your books, it doesn't speak very much. So if somebody wants to have a book that means something, they have to follow accrual accounting, which is not what most small and micro businesses do. And of course, it is very true that you got to have your product line and your product costing in place. You've got to be able to show that which one is the one that's making money, which is not making that much money. How do you prioritize which product to go? And one thing that Darren mentioned was very important, which was one of the strategies is to have more products or diverse products, and to spend more money on getting more products into the space. And getting products which actually work and in different environments would be very good. And of course, we've got more money to spend in Harvey Norman because we didn't go on $50,000 holidays.
Sure.
See you, Toby.
So
Yeah, thanks for being here, Toby.
yeah, it's Toby. Yeah, Toby's got a few things he's got to attend to, so he can't. He's just listening in the background. So if that's all the questions we've got, I'd just like to thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that you've really got some positiveness out of this, that it is possible to be adaptable. You've just got to make sure you keep in contact with your customers so you know exactly where they're going to be. Like if they're doing this, you've got to be with them. Yeah? So you've got to have a connection strategy so you know exactly what they're doing, what they're thinking, they're feeling, because every time we get hit over the head with another lockdown, psychologically things start to happen with their behaviours, the way that they think. Making sure that you surround yourself with your business coaches, staying in contact with your accountant. Those forecasts are so important that are only, you know, lockdowns coming. Make sure you keep in contact with your network. So, you know, someone knows someone who knows someone in Parliament. Like call Karen. Like Karen knows everybody in the government. So we all should be connecting with you, Karen. So thank you so much for your time today. I'd just like to thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And the next one we're doing will be, I think it's about sort of 8th of July. And it's more along the psychological things, because PTSD or collective trauma is actually real. So if any of you are finding it hard to focus, or you're having trouble showing up at work, and just you feel like you could be almost either not getting your shit together or you're losing your shit, either or, right? That is something that is actually a symptom of the lockdown trauma that we're all experiencing. So I've got an American who has got a special technique to deal with the COVID PTSD trauma that we may not be aware of, that we're absorbing, because seriously, I think we are being fed a diet of fear, and if you do that long enough, unfortunately, what happens is we start to actually get the symptoms happening. So look out for that next webinar, which I will send you all out sometime in early July. So thank you very much for your time today, and see you later.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later all.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.